My name is Kendra Godina, and the title of my project is A Dog's Presence and Its Effect on the Cognitive Ability in Aging People. This study was brought about when I realized that animals, and specifically dogs, have been used for ages in animal-assisted therapy, and they have been proven beneficial for both the health and the emotional side. What I didn't know was whether or not they'd have any effect on the cognitive ability. My hypothesis was that they would, and that when a dog was present, test scores would increase by 5%. The general method for this study was to take a dog to a nursing home facility and test the subjects when the dog was present and when the dog was not present, and then run a paired t-test on those scores to make sure that they were statistically significant. Furthermore, we alternated groups. For example, in week 1, group 1 would have the dog, group 2 would not. In week 2, group 2 would have the dog, group 1 would not. This was to ensure that the order they were tested in did not matter. In order to test this, we ran an unpaired t-test on those values. The dog used for this study was solicited based on availability. The dog we ended up going with was a 7-month-old Labrador Retriever, a female. The subjects used in the study were solicited on availability as well from my local nursing home facility. The staff at the facility provided a list of eligible candidates for the study. Now, if we look here at the conclusion, my first null hypothesis was that there was no difference between the test population and the control group. This was ultimately proved if we look here at Figure 1, Figure 2, and Figure 8. In Figure 1, this represents Trial 1, and we can see that the blue bars here represent the scores with the dog, where the purple bars represent the scores without the dog. Here in Trial 2, same deal. The blue bars represent the scores with the dog, the purple bars represent the scores without the dog. You can see that the blue is higher in every single subject that was tested. Furthermore, here in Figure 8, we have the average increase of each subject's scores over Trial 1 and Trial 2, and you can see that each subject increased at least 5%. Therefore, the data was accurate and the dog did have an effect. In order to make sure that this was statistically significant, I needed to run these values through a t-test. When I did this, I ran them through a paired t-test, and the p-value of Trial 1 came back less than 0.006%. The p-value of Trial 2 came back less than 0.008%. Both of those proving that each trial was statistically significant, and the dog did have a beneficial impact. My second null hypothesis was that there would be no difference between the groups despite the order they were tested in. In order to test this, I needed to run the values of the scores from each trial into an unpaired t-test. This was to determine that the order when I switched the groups did not have any effect on the study. The value of this t-test was above 1 and therefore was not statistically significant, which is what I wanted. In addition to this data here, I also recorded observational data, which is represented here in Figure 3 through Figure 7, these pie charts. In this first pie chart in Figure 3, it represents the percentage that smiled when the dog was present, which is 65% of the subjects, whereas in Figure 4 here, only 30% of the subjects smiled when just the evaluator was present. Furthermore, in Figure 5, 55% of people talked to the dog, where only 45% of people talked to the evaluator when the dog was not present. In Figure 7 here, we have that 80% of the subjects had physical contact with the dog or pet the dog, whereas 0% of the subjects had any physical contact with the evaluator. In addition to this observational data, I also was going to run a Trial 3. However, due to the fact that the subjects were intolerant to answering questions unless the dog was present. I could not gather data to run a trial 3. So when the dog wasn't present, they were not wanting to do the study. Finally, as a reflection, there are a couple things that, while the data in this study is believed to be accurate, there are a couple things that could have a possible effect. First, the overall day of the subjects could have an effect. We tested subjects over numerous days, so that subject's day, or the attitude of that subject's day, could have an effect. Second, the same dog was used throughout the entire duration of the study, so that could have an effect. That just proves that this specific dog was significant in the study, but that does not go for all dogs. The time of day could also affect the study. I tested around 2 o'clock. However, that just proves that the study works and is significant in the afternoon. That does not go for any other time of day. Third, the subjects were not tested in a specific order within their groups. So while I tested the order of the groups that were tested, I did not test the order of the subjects within that group. It was just based on who was available at the time. And finally, the amount of time that was in between each subject could have an effect on their results. So in conclusion, all of this data here proves that a dog was significant in improving the cognitive ability in subjects, and proves that further research should be conducted on whether or not dogs would be beneficial to instill in nursing homes around the country. Thank you.